Week 11 in college football. Joe and I give our power rankings. My friend, go ahead and give yours, your 1 through 10.
Number 1, new number 1, Oregon. Number 2, Georgia. Number 3, Ohio State. Number 4, Miami. Number 5, Texas. 6, Penn State. 7, Indiana. 8, Tennessee. 9, Notre Dame. 10, Texas A&M.
All right. Oregon, number 1. Mine. Oregon, number 1. Georgia, number 2. Ohio State, number 3. Miami, number 4. Penn State, number 5. Texas, number 6. Tennessee, number 7. Notre Dame at 8. Number 9,
on them than I am.
Ole Miss. Number 10, Texas A&M. Let me go ahead and start off with this. Okay. I put Notre Dame in there so I didn't have to hear your shit. But the truth is...
stop. I'm going to give you more shit about Indiana than I would give you about Notre Dame.
The truth is, LSU should be above Ole Miss in these power rankings.
Yes and no.
They have the same exact record, and they beat them. They have the same kind of loss, USC, Kentucky. The only other loss is a head-to-head to LSU. So, if we're going to talk Ole Miss here for just an example...
did you not put LSU in yours?
On purpose, yes, okay. Because I knew you would freak out if I left Notre Dame out and put LSU in. But
that's not true.
And speaking about Notre Dame, here's the truth. I don't think even in the college football playoff they should have been ranked as high as they are. I'm gonna be real with you. I don't, because if you're going based off of eye test and resume, okay, Joe. At the bottom line, I know you're talking about power ranking and all this kind of other stuff. Indiana gets a pass. I'm not talking about them today, but the bottom line is, Joe, what are these teams losing to? These SEC teams that are at the bottom. Now, you can say I'm an SEC homer, SEC bias. Who are the losses to? Okay, now you also have a loss. And the question now becomes, Joe, if everything else is equal, those one losses for those other SEC teams, that doesn't matter when you're playing Dookie State and Dookie Water State. Right? It just doesn't. So, again, I'm putting Notre Dame there because I know you'd freak out.
No. Stop. I really hope that that's not your logic for doing that.
Joe,
I really hope that that's not.
Joe, they don't in God's honest truth, they have no business being up there.
Then why did you put them in there?
Because
you put them in there so that we can shit on them? Is that why you put them in there?
We got to discuss them, because here's the truth.
I'd argue I'm freaking out more that you put them in there and then are taking the time to point out that you shouldn't have put them in there. I would argue that is more problematic and toxic reasoning.
But at the end of the day, they would be favored above those teams that are in the SEC. And they beat A&M in a game won under Mike Elko. I don't think they win that game again. They're too beat up. I don't trust in Riley Leonard. I trust Marcel Reed more than I trust Riley Leonard at the current moment.
I don't agree with that part of it. And I think that if they played on a neutral site, I think that game would be more evenly matched than you're willing to consider. I don't think it's a guaranteed win for Texas A&M. I think if they played each other...
I didn't say it's a guaranteed win. I said I think that they would beat them. I think they're a better team now than Notre Dame is. Just because they played in week 1 means nothing to me. And the context of a game won under year 1 head coach.
So are we supposed to just throw out the fact that Notre Dame has that win? Or are we also going to throw out Notre Dame or LSU's loss to USC? Does week
we're
1,
not.
Is that not a part of the season? Is that not part of the year?
No. Am I supposed to ignore the other 10 weeks?
What does that have to do with what you're trying to say here?
I mean, in the rest part of the season, you also lost to NIU. And that continues to be missed. So if you want to talk about going on the road and beating A&M in year 1 under a head coach, in game 1, NIU washes that out. It completely washes it out. I'm sorry, but it does. So they're out there, but they're going to get in the playoff based off of the dome, the Golden Dome. If this were anybody else.
I'm so perplexed on why you put them in there. You get to pick who goes in there. I'm perplexed by you placing them in there. And also, I don't totally disagree with what you're presenting here. It's been one of the things that I've talked about with Notre Dame this year. The minute that they lost to NIU, I have projected and said that it was going to require a lot of extra help in order for them to get into the playoff. Louisville beating Clemson, really helps their case because now Louisville's a ranked team and they're in a position where they can win out and they can finish as a ranked ACC team. That's not going to go to the playoff, but a ranked team. Same thing with Texas A&M. Texas A&M probably isn't going to get into the playoff because I think that they're going to lose to Texas at the end of the year and they're going to have 3 losses and they're going to get boxed out, but they're still going to have 2 quality wins over ranked teams. Army's probably not going to be ranked after Notre Dame beats them. USC is probably also not going to be ranked. I'm not projecting forward here, but since the NIU loss, Notre Dame has gotten better, and even despite the injuries that they've encountered, they have also consistently gotten better. They've got a lot of young players that are playing really good football right now. You don't know
if you've gotten better in your secondary when you're facing Navy. Sorry. Ben Morrison out. You play Navy. Okay. You don't know that.
We haven't. Navy's not the only team that we've played since Ben Morrison's gone down.
Okay, and who's the other?
We played Georgia Tech, but it's not like Notre Dame. Hold on.
King there? Was Haynes King there?
Haynes King was not there.
Okay.
Notre Dame can't help who they are playing. It's the same argument that we're talking about with Indiana. They can't help who they're playing.
You've been consistent when other teams have also been injured. Haynes King's not there. You're playing a team that doesn't throw, and your number 1 corner's out.
Notre Dame has had plenty of depth at secondary, though, that, again, Benjamin and also Morrison was playing very inconsistently this year. This was not the same level of performance that Morrison. I understand that. I'm not trying to discount his performance and his potential impact. He's going to be a early draftable player in the 2025 draft if he chooses to declare. But I think that this is what gets really confusing with me when we talk about Notre Dame. It's very hyperbolic when you break them down. Like, you're trying to make it seem like they're this 4-loss team that doesn't belong in the conversation.
No, I just don't think that they've truly been tested like some of these other teams. I don't.
Well, the teams that have been tested have more losses than them. So, like, what am I supposed to do with that? If those teams had the same record as Notre Dame, the conversation would be different. But they don't have the same record.
They also don't have the same schedule. And you're going.
Wait. You're basically asking me to guess. You're basically asking us to guess. Like, well, they've got more losses, and they didn't win in those games that were tests.
And I have more answers about Ole Miss than I do Notre Dame. And to be honest with you, if it came down to it on a neutral site right now, I am not taking Notre Dame to beat Ole Miss. It's just not happening.
I don't agree with that at all because Ole Miss has been extremely inconsistent.
You need to start naming the teams that you think that they're better than. So where do you have them on yours?
Oh, yeah, let's pull that up.
You have them at 9. So again,
perfectly reasonable location. I think that they would beat Texas A&M if they played them again. I don't think that they're good enough to beat Tennessee right now. I don't think that they beat Indiana. I don't think that they beat Penn State. I think that defensively they're good enough to perform well against LSU. I think that they're good enough to beat Ole Miss. I think that they'd be good enough to beat Alabama. I think
score with those teams, Joe.
They didn't need to score with Texas A&M when they played them the first.
Oh my God. They have a brand new quarterback that's been going off, and you want to say they can't? It wasn't a big deal when the kid that got benched is not there no more.
Notre Dame's offense. I don't think that you've paid close enough attention to what Notre Dame has done, and it's understandable. They haven't played anyone.
How do you think that I knew NIU was as close as it was? And I'm texting you in the second quarter. I watch every Notre Dame game just to troll you.
I understand that you do that. Notre Dame, you should know that Notre Dame's offense and their run game has consistently gotten better week over week.
Against no names.
They're not squeaking out wins over those opponents by 5 points. They're dominating them. They've kicked the crap out of everybody that they've played since the NIU loss. And this has been my whole talking point with them. Why they get into the playoff is that you leave no doubt. You smoke everyone you're supposed to play. You at least have that to point to. They can't help who they're playing. But at the very least, if they're beating the shit out of everybody, that's reputable.
Joe, there's not a team on their schedule that they're beating that's reputable.
I believe that they have a higher strength of schedule than some of the other teams that we've been talking about.
Indiana is going to be the only one. Literally, it's going to be the only one. Name a reputable win. Louisville? Is that where you're going? Notre Dame's
strength of record has them at 15.
That's bullshit because they're playing no-name, no bodies that. What's their strength of schedule?
Strength of schedule has them at
10 what?
74.
Dog shit.
74 is higher than it's obviously not higher than any of the SEC teams.
Exactly. So thank you for making my point.
It's higher than Ole Miss's. Ole Miss is 83rd so far this season.
I'm sorry to tell you, but they're playing Georgia this week, and that's not accounted a part of the strength of schedule. So you can't tell me that.
Wasting too much. We're spending too much time on Notre Dame. We need to move on. I think that you are extremely hyperbolic with the way that you analyze.
It's time that we started to trash them. All right, I picked my battle. Now you go ahead and pick yours.
Let me throw yours back up on the screen here. I don't agree. I thought about this yesterday after the conversation that we had, and this is a bit nitpicky, but I really don't agree
with Penn State.
That Texas should be ahead of Penn State. I think that Texas, despite them playing a very weak schedule as well, I do not think that Texas is better than Penn State. I think that Texas is far more explosive offensively.
Joe, they're 7 points to your number 2 team.
At home. They were playing. Yeah, but wait, hold on. But that's that's not what I just said, though. I'm talking about how their defense played great. They played a really great defensive game against Ohio State at home. In one of the hardest home environments.
Texas was at home and had 50 total yards of offense against Georgia in the first half.
I don't think that transitive property paints that picture.
No,
we've watched both those teams
ranking
play.
Team versus team, right?
Okay. Yes.
If you want to split the hairs, okay, you have Texas on the road at Vandy needing a field goal to win the football game.
Vanderbilt's a harder opponent than most
team.
By the AP poll, they're ranked. Vanderbilt is a harder opponent than most of what Penn State has played. I don't trust Penn State's offense in that matchup if that game turned into a shootout.
And I don't trust Quinn Ewers.
You trust Drew Allard more than you trust Quinn Ewers?
Yeah, I do. You know why? Because against Ohio State, he led them on an 80-yard drive without turning the ball over. Every time in a crucial situation, Georgia, I've seen Quinn Ewers turn over the football. Joe, he literally got benched, okay, against Georgia because he was turning the ball over too much. Sark in the postgame came out and said, well, we had to emphasize to Quinn yet again to stop turning the ball over, and that's the truth. You're right. Do I think from the fundamental piece down that Texas overall is a better team? I'll give you that. I'll concede that. I think they're better on both lines of scrimmage. What I'm not going to give you at the current moment is that I cannot, for the life of me, trust in Quinn Ewers. I can't, and I'm not going to.
I don't think that there's as much separation between – I think that they're right in the same exact level. I think that they are equal to one another. I think that they both could lead that type of a drive against Ohio State.
Well, then fight over your semantics then, because if I got one at 5 and the other at 6 and you have one at 5 and the other
again, that's what I'm saying. I'm nitpicking with that. I don't think that Penn State.
But at the same time, if we're going talent versus talent, but stay with me for just a moment. Let's go talent v. talent for just a moment here. Okay. Ohio State, regardless of what anybody thinks about them, is arguably one of, if not the, on paper, most talented from athlete to athlete. Would you agree with that?
No, I still would put Georgia there.
No.
And also, wait, the version of...
Would you agree? Just answer the question. I'm not asking you about other teams. Do you think that they are one of, if not...
One of, yes. No, okay, one of. Forget exactly the last part. They are one of the best teams.
And I saw that secondary at Penn State run with those receivers all night long and play very tight coverage. What I saw against
no receivers, though. Penn State doesn't have any good receivers.
I saw Penn State's DBs run against Ohio State's wide receivers and cover them at a very alarming rate. And I got to be real with you. If they can guard that unit, Quinn Ewers is going to make a mistake. So if we want to fight over semantics and Penn State and all this, brother, I am not putting Penn State, who was at the 1 yard line and lost by 7. Penn State legitimately being on the 1 yard line when I got 50 total yards against Texas in a blowout. By the way, their defense gave them 3 turnovers. Let's remember this now. It's not as if that Texas didn't have help defensively. Their defense played flawlessly. And Quinn Ewers continued to fumble the bag over and over and over again like he has in his entire career.
I don't like using the comparison of how did Penn State play against Ohio State and how did Texas play against Georgia, because I think at the current moment right now, because Ohio State is banged up, Georgia is a better football team than Ohio State. Wasn't the case coming into the year.
Yeah,
that was very even. So I don't like using that as the talking point. I understand what you're saying with Ohio State here, that they got to the 1 yard line, they got to the goal line, and twice they failed. Twice they couldn't convert. I think that's worse. That's more telling of offensive incapability.
Joe, how many
times to score points?
Joe, how many times are you going to allow Quinn Ewers to get away with murder?
But this is again hyperbole. Like, this is hyperbolic.
No, but
to point out his issue.
Here's what Drew Aller and Penn State didn't have. They didn't have Will Howard throw 3 picks like Carson Beck did. So we can say Georgia's good. You're right. But Georgia's literally coming off a game where they're struggling to beat Florida in the second half. Joe, they are literally, with 3 minutes left to go, they are struggling to beat them. And you know that.
You're going through like this long ladder of transitive property here.
No, Drew Aller, for what it's worth, has been more consistent than what Quinn Ewers does. That's why the interceptions are the way that they are.
I get that he has had interceptions against Vanderbilt and he has had interceptions against Georgia. I think the collective unit around Quinn Ewers, like we've seen happen with Georgia. Carson Beck plays bad. The rest of the team elevates him. They finish those games. I would much rather trust the collective unit, the team, the coaching staff for Texas than I would trust the collective unit, the coaching staff for Penn State. Again, we're getting into semantics with this. It's a one spot over the other. But if I'm getting down to it, the biggest part is the whole team. And I would argue, but more importantly, coaching decisions, preparation. Sark's a better coach than James Franklin.
I'm going to throw this out there. You say that, okay? Literally, Sark has 1 10-win season. He's going to get to another one. If he goes into A&M and loses, and he loses another playoff game, what you going to say about him?
But that hasn't happened yet, so I don't have an opinion on it.
Oh, okay. But you're moving goalposts on me here to some extent. Joe, in 10 seasons, 12 seasons, James Franklin has 10 10-win seasons. I get what you're saying, that he underperforms against the big boys. But outside the Bama win against a team in Bama that, changed overnight, they have also been highly inconsistent. They have the most favorable schedule in the SEC, without a doubt. I still don't think that this Texas team is who everybody says that they are. I don't. I legitimately don't. Y'all, all right. Hey, I bet the house on this. Now, I'm not going to put real money down. Here's what I'm going to bet the house on. They're going to fall and everybody's going to be like, oh, well, they really didn't play anybody throughout the season. No, they didn't.
They're still going to go to the playoff, though.
Yeah.
If they lose to Texas A&M on the road, they're still. I hope they get matched up with Penn State, and then we can find that out. All right, who else do you have an issue with?
Weren't they lined up with Bama?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
Joe, I'm going to tell you this right now. I'm not taking Texas in that game. I promise you, not doing it.
Well, Bama's not going to get in based on what we're projecting this weekend.
Yeah.
If Bama loses,
right, they're out. All right, where do you want to go here? Because we pretty much have the same top 5. Where do you want to go here? I'll go here.
You want to talk about Oregon? We're both on the same page with Oregon. We moved more Oregon up one.
I mean, look, we talked about Oregon 3 times already this week. We can, but we have Georgia ahead of Ohio State in ours. I don't know if you want to go there.
All right, let's start there, and then we'll jump to Oregon. We said this last night when the rankings were revealed that we did not agree that Ohio State should have been at 2 over Georgia. I understand that a lot of people want to point out the way that they played against Florida. It was one guy who had a bad game. Carson Beck played very poorly that kept Florida within close. I think a lot of people discount and don't truly understand rivalry games like that. Florida's better than people give credit for. Florida, if they were playing in the Big Ten right now, and I hate doing that. A lot of people rely on that as the crux of their arguments. But if Florida did not have the schedule that they had at the current moment and they were playing in an easier conference, we'd be talking about them as a playoff team. They're actually playing good football. They're just overmatched
with the Big 12.
Oh, without a doubt. Without a doubt, they would. They're just overmatched with the opponents that they're going up against because they were given the most brutal schedule in the country. Because their record looks bad, it looks like Georgia played a shitty game against a bad team. Not the truth. More importantly, that is one of their biggest rivalries of the season. They're going to go all out and put all their energy into that game, especially when Billy Napier is coaching for his job and is probably going to get fired, but is trying to build up some credibility for the remaining parts of the season. If he beat Georgia, we might be talking about him differently. But separate from that, I think that Georgia, for the way that they've played on a week-to-week basis and when they play at their best, that's what I'm counting on here. When they play at their best, they're better than Ohio State's best at the moment. Think
about this. They're scoring more points when Carson Beck throws one or more interceptions. They score 35 points. When he doesn't throw interceptions, they're scoring 31 points. So the ironic thing here
is ridiculous. That's a ridiculous stat. If that's true.
I'll tell you where I got it. I got it from Jake Crane. Okay. So if I'm wrong, then go blame Jake Crane in the Daily Wire. Okay. But that's nuts. But the God's honest truth is when I look at Georgia, I've seen situations and instances where Carson Beck doesn't turn the ball over.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm banking on that. Put them at 2A, 2B for me, though. I still would put Georgia over them, but 2A, 2B. I don't think that Ohio State's done anything wrong enough, really, for us to fight over the semantic. If Ohio State's 2, I don't agree with it, but I'm not going to fight over it, if that makes sense.
So I think Jake's stat is correct. So the start of the season where he was playing cleaner football, 34 points against Clemson, 48 against Tennessee Tech, 13 against Kentucky. No picks in that game. They only got 160 passing yards. Alabama only 34. Auburn 31. He didn't throw any picks in that game. And then this remaining stretch of the year, where he's had this terrible stretch with interceptions, 41, 30, and 34. So some of their biggest offensive outputs have come when he's playing like shit.
Wild.
Yeah, that's an insane thing.
I got it from Jake. It sounds like it is pretty true. So Oregon. Joe, what do we got to say about Oregon? What do you want us to say?
I think I want to still monitor their run defense because we mentioned that in the preview that it's slowly gotten worse and worse. They're giving up 120 rush yards per game. And I don't know if that's just the circumstance of going up against 2 straight teams that run the football effectively that's caused it to be inflated against Michigan and Michigan State. But outside of that, Blake, they have been the most consistent team. They have consistently dominated, and they have a really good win against Ohio State where they showed when they play at their best, they're good enough to beat the best and to play a really good, well-rounded, sound game. So I don't think anyone's arguing that this isn't a hot take to have them at number 1.
They're just the most consistent team, and they don't have a loss, and everybody else does. So there's not a lot to go off of in reference to putting who you're going to put at 1. Just stay consistent. I agree with you. I was saying this for 2 weeks, and y'all looked at me like I was crazy. Oregon fans, I still think their run defense is leaky. And then their argument was, well, Ashton Jeanty does that to everybody. No, not what you've been doing. So, excuse me. Joe, I do think they're hitting a little bit better stride offensively, though, which is, you could take it with the running game, but if you're going to do and be who you are offensively like that, I don't think it's a problem. So
Yeah. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts.